Planet Tharkad, 3058, the capital world of the Lyran side of the Federated Commonwealth. The first conference of its kind since ages long past, the leaders of the Inner Sphere gathered to address a very serious problem and how to bring an end to it, permanently. The clans would hold only their word for so long, as the Truce of Tukid was close to an end and the invasion would resume. So they took it upon themselves to come up with a solution, and that solution would bring about the greatest fighting force ever seen, and this force would shake the clans to their very core and annihilate one of the strongest Crusader clans. 2 operations and task forces would be the first sign of the end of Clan Smoke Jaguar, Operation Bulldog and Operation Serpent. Both had their sights set upon the strongest clan left to invade the Inner Sphere, and their actions would carry forth into the future, giving a message to any current and future Crusaders: the Inner Sphere will not be conquered. But these task forces were but the vanguard to the biggest insult to the Crusader clans. Was it a combined operations force? Was it new and advanced weaponry? No. It was the Star League Reborn. Late September of 3058, Victor Steiner Davion called a meeting extending the invitation to the great leaders of the Inner Sphere, the Draconis Combine, Capellan Confederation, Free Worlds League, his sister Catherine Steiner Davion, whom was now going by the name Katrina Steiner to represent the Lyran side, and Victor himself representing the Federated Sons. Also invited were the leaders of the Free Rosshog Republic, St. Ives Compact, Comstar, and Khan Phelan Kel to represent the Warden Wolves in exile. While the invitations were sent out, Katrina made a publicity move, playing up the importance of this meeting and hosted a grand ball at the Tharkad Palace. Everyone invited would arrive October 1st, and the first Widding Conference would begin on the 3rd. Initial discussion began with the metaphorical elephant in the room, the grave threat the clans presented to the Inner Sphere. Everyone knew they would resume the invasion eventually, and even more dire, it was all but assured that this time, the clans would win. They would come back prepared and not give the Inner Sphere any quarter. Left to the Crusaders, the clans would raise the Inner Sphere and rebuild from the ashes. With the information provided by Warden Wolfcon Phelan Kel, it was clear how to proceed, and had agreed upon the formations of a plan. They would destroy a powerful clan to send a message to the others. With the information Kel provided, the clan that would be set an example was none other than Clan Smoke Jaguar, the most aggressive and bloodthirsty of the invading clans. The reasons for selecting them instead of the others were because it would provide the most success if they were defeated. Clan Wolf and Jade Falcon were severely weakened from the refusal war, and were not in any shape to resume the invasion anytime soon. This meant that the Jaguars had the strongest military at the time. The Jaguars were also the strongest Crusader clan able to invade, and if destroyed, the other Crusader clans would think twice about following through with an invasion. Internally, it would show the Crusaders their way of arrogance was incorrect, and led to the biggest of them all to destruction. With Clan Smoke Jaguar destroyed, the Crusaders would now know the Inner Sphere was too strong to be conquered, and the position of the Crusaders in the Clan Grand Council would be weakened, letting the Wardens take over and rein in the hot-blooded warriors that threatened the Inner Sphere's safety. The last and most unspoken benefit that would later be appreciated was the Draconis Combine's restriction on media, allowing any military activity to be conducted in secret, adding an element of surprise to the attacks on the Jaguar occupation zone. When it came down to it, a call for resurrecting the Star League was made. Attempting to make a political play, Katrina attempted to seize the title of First Lord by voting for Capellan Chancellor Sun Tzu Liao. However, her brother Victor was well aware of her personal machinations and called her bluff, also voting for Sun Tzu. With the new First Lord, the politics of a second Star League were set. Every 4 years, a new First Lord would be elected from their number, ensuring no dictatorship could rise and force responsibility on the other leaders. Military actions were prepared, but Comstar Pre-Center Anastasius fought, presented new and startling information. the Exodus Road, and the location of the Smoke Jaguar homeworld, Huntress. They now had a way to strike directly at the clans and hit them where they live. This forced the creation of a simultaneous strike, one against the occupational forces and one against the Smoke Jaguar's home. Two operations and task forces were created, Operation Bulldog and Task Force Bulldog, led by Victor and Fought, would target the occupation zones and destroy them or force them out of the inner sphere. Task Force Serpent would conduct Operation Serpent and move on Huntress around the same time. This would leave the Jaguars with nowhere to go. Task Force Bulldog consisted of Fed Sons, Draconis Combine, and large amounts of Clan Novicat forces whom previously were bondsmen, switching sides at the creation of the Star League, and once the Smoke Jaguars were driven out of the occupation zone that they originally held. Task Force Serpent, which was more heavily outfitted, consisted of the 1st Cathal Ulans, Iridani Lighthorse, Northwind Highlanders, Comstar Invader Galaxy, 11th Lyran Guards, 2nd Sword of Light, Akaran's Armored Cavalry, St. Ives 1st Lancers, and the Knights of the Inner Sphere. Meanwhile, in Clan Space, the aftermath of the Refusal War had settled, and a new Ilkhan was to be selected after Ulrich Kerensky, who was killed in action during the trial of Refusal. As the only one to lead the Crusaders back on top, Lincoln Ozis of Clan Smoke Jaguar was elected Ilkhan. Immediately beginning preparations for a renewed invasion, Khan Vlad Ward of Clan Wolf and Khan Martha Pride of Clan Jade Falcon set about delaying him for everyone else to build up their forces. Whether this was a purposeful move because they knew what might have been coming is left to personal subjection. Planned destruction or not, Ozis took the respite to further his own forces, reforming several frontline clusters and increase the flow of supplies into their occupation zones, fully intending to steamroll the inner sphere as soon as he could. He would never get the chance. May 3059. The Jaguars got their first hint that the end was coming. A preemptive strike in the occupation zone revealed what the inner sphere has been up to since the truce. They rallied behind a single banner, but not just any banner. The Comoran Star flew above, painted on their mechs, tanks, aerospace fighters. Their worst nightmare had come to haunt them. Not only has the Inner Sphere created a new Star League, but one without the clan's guiding hand, the true descendants of the original Star League. This made Ozis and his Jaguars furious. Operation Bulldog was underway, and the first wave of attacks overwhelmed the Jaguars, most not able to do much to counter their ferocity and advanced tactics, meant to counter them specifically. Though prepared for the second wave, the Smoke Jaguars fared a little better, losing 11 worlds yet managing to cripple 2 regiments of the SLDF. A short respite was presented between the second and third SLDF attack wave, which the Jaguars capitalized on. Launching a counterattack, their plan quickly fell apart when they realized capture worlds were more heavily defended than anticipated. This attack suffered heavy losses and gained very little to the Jaguars. The third and final blow to the Jaguar occupation in the Inner Sphere came with them garrisoning the periphery worlds they had first taken in 3050, and put together a few clusters spread across 7 worlds. In the settling ashes, Smoke Jaguar no longer held ground in the Inner Sphere. Stepping back to November 14th of 3058, just 1 month after the Whitting Conference, Task Force Serpent began gathering their massive amount of forces on Fort Defiance, a world in the Crucis March on the Federated and Draconis border. It was a barren rock meant for military training, but now served as a mass landing site for the preparations they'd make before taking the long journey on the Exodus Road. Led by Marshal Morgan Hasek Davion, he personally asked for certain units which were already named previously to join Task Force Serpent. He managed to get most of them, the rest being placed in Task Force Bulldog. The Draconis Combine cannot place the second Sword of Light with Serpent, but lended a warship instead, as the Sword of Light would remain in the Inner Sphere to eject the Jaguars out of their old space. The St. Ives 1st Lancers were attached to current ruler, Solayer's champion, and close personal friend of Victor's, Kai Allard Liao. Due to political reasons, the 1st Lancers could not leave, thus the 2nd Lancers were given to Serpent instead. The Comstar Invader Galaxy was replaced with the 2nd Comguard Division, and the Rosselhog Republic offered the 4th Dracons. Lastly, claiming he needed his elite troops in the Confederation, Sun Tzu instead offered the Kingston's Legionnaires, which consisted of people with questionable honor. Regardless, Task Force Serpent was to be feared. After a roster of units was made, the next few months would see the arrival of the forces. Taking time to practice, train, and spar with each other, the next months of time on Fort Defiance would see inter-unit relations. This was intended so each unit would work with each other at their best, rather than pieces doing their own thing. The effort was successful, and by the end of the sessions in April 3059, Task Force Serpent was a unified, cohesive unit. May 1st, 3059, Task Force Serpent departed en masse from Fort Defiance, and traveled forward through the Inner Sphere. Only minor complications arose, but continued to stick to out-of-the-way and uninhabited periphery systems to avoid detection. At last, on July 19th, Task Force Serpent departed the Inner Sphere and started their long journey on the Exodus Road. November 16th, Task Force Serpent arrived in the Maribah system, located in the deep periphery. Hasek would send scouts to a nearby habitable planet for fresh water, only to discover an active base. Fearing it was clan-occupied, Hasek made the order to eliminate them immediately. The scout dropships soon reported back that it was in fact a pirate base. Regardless, Hasek still ordered the obliteration of the base for the sake of secrecy. This would cause friction between him and his first officers, as the extreme measures personally grinded against them. The Iridani Light Horse would carry out the attack, freeing the captured slaves, and any surviving pirates were tried and executed through airlock ejection. December 15th, Task Force Serpent stumbled across a small Clan Ghost Bear fleet, the first Clan Force Serpent would see. The small fleet consisted of an invader jumpship, 2 whirlwind destroyers, and 1 Congress frigate. Hasek made a batchal for possession and called to the warships. Attention, Clan warships. I am Marshal Morgan Hasek Davion, commander of the Star League Task Force Serpent. Let this be my batchal. I call upon you to prepare to defend your fleet and yourselves. We will be attacking you with all but 1 of our warships. I name as Isorla any ship that is rendered unable to fight or maneuver, and claim its passengers and crew as bondsmen. What forces do you bid in your defense? After a few long moments, a response came. I am Star Colonel Alonso Gilmore of Clan Ghost Bear. I do not recognize your claim to the Star League. I accept your batchal. I will defend my fleet with every asset at my disposal. The fighting would be fierce, but won quickly in favor of Serpent. The Battle of Trafalgar was over. The clan flotilla defeated, Task Force Serpent was placed with several issues that needed to be addressed. Firstly, the repair of their ships. Most had not taken structural damage, but they lost 1 dropship, and a warship by the name Starlight lost some of its weapons, the other ships taking armor damage in the fighting. This would compromise them in further engagements. Their saving grace would come in the Isorla they won. Out of the Ghost Bear ships, only 1 was in shape enough to be repaired and added to the fleet. Whirlwind destroyer called Firefang was repaired and added as the 8th warship. Serpent also won an undamaged Clan Broadsword dropship, a couple undamaged Union C dropships, a dozen Omni fighters, and a star of Omni mechs. All were distributed to the units for the coming battles. However, the stresses were not done. Task Force Serpent's biggest and most glaring problem was the small fleet was tasked with relocating Ghost Bear civilians to the Inner Sphere. The fleet which not only carried their normal crew, but thousands of civilians. Without the resources to bring them along, more than a few officers expressed their dislike of accepting clan bondsmen as allies. Morgan would quickly step in to settle the dispute, declaring any clanner willing to lay down a bond with the task force would be accepted, even if it came down to all of them being placed in his personal staff. The others who would not be taken with the fleet would be left on a habitable world until the fleet could take them. Technicians between Clan Serpent, bondsman, and task force were eased when a technician bondsman saved the life of an Inner Sphere technician during a 0G salvage operation. Rewarded by Morgan, this technician regained his freedom and willingly accepted a place in Morgan's personal staff. Other bondsmen considered most trustworthy helped form a skeleton crew for captured clan warship Firefang. The repair operations lasted several days, with some commanders growing uneasy being in a system that was used by clans and feared discovery. Despite this, the operations were completed and Serpent were able to jump out of system on the 25th of December. However, upon departure, a technician detected an abnormal jump signature, most likely an inbound jump ship. The event was noted but not investigated, since Serpent had left before it arrived and evaded detection. December 30th saw the ghost bears that did not swear an oath on a habitable world with supplies, and a promise someone would come back for them. In the night of January 2nd, 3060, tragedy struck as Marshal Morgan Hasek Davion was found dead in his quarters. Initially assumed as natural causes, a first officer had previously become suspicious of another due to ongoing friction between them and Morgan, and assumed they killed Morgan to assume command. While the who was a mystery, an autopsy confirmed that murder was involved. A rare toxin placed in his whiskey from a few select Inner Sphere worlds sparked a lockdown of the fleet and a fleet-wide search. During investigations, 5 Comstar members whom had previously not existed until they joined were labeled as prime suspects. One of them tried to hold the fleet hostage with a so-called bomb threat that proved fake. However, in the struggle that came, the suspect was killed by a Shoryuken that vanished after it struck the suspect. The true assassin would later be revealed to be that very suspect whom was killed mysteriously, a Comstar technician by the name of Lucas Penrose. Morgan's first officer, now General Ariana Winston, assumed command of Task Force Serpent and discovered secret messages left by Morgan in the event of his death. Within was a secret gift Theodore Creata had gifted to Task Force Serpent. Their primary use, at Morgan's suggestion in his notes, was assassinating high-ranking Smoke Jaguar officials. They were Nekakami, 4 of whom belonged to a secret order that traced their lineage back to the ninja of Terran Japan. General Winston would be contacted by one of these assassins, stating they had come into contact with Lucas Penrose before, whom was a Loki agent. Loki agents were specifically tied to the Federated Commonwealth, but have shifted to the Lyran Commonwealth recently. The assassin also confirmed they had saved General Winston with the Shoryuken, and asked a particular member of the task force to be released from custody. Winston, very obviously, agreed. Beyond Task Force Serpent, those who play at politics will realize whom was truly behind this assassination, and the ramifications of such a move would not be felt until after the clans were dealt with. But we will get to that later, when the Inner Sphere will once again be at war with itself. During Morgan's funeral on January 11th, the Task Force Serpent fleet detected a strong transmission. By sheer luck, they had detected the last transmission of the original Star League sent to the Inner Sphere, by Alexander Kerensky. It was the message that would become known as the Voice of Kerensky, and it was the same message that we have covered before. It detailed why the Star League departed the Inner Sphere, and their intent to return as betters and set an example. The message came across as haunting, but yet inspiring. It also made abundantly clear that the clan homeworlds were not much further. The Voice of Kerensky would not be heard in full by the Inner Sphere for another 800 years, due to the message being broadcast naturally and traveling at light speed. Task Force Serpent would arrive at Waypoint Mulberry, a few jumps away from Huntress. General Winston gave final commands and speeches to rouse the task force for the coming battle, one that will determine the Inner Sphere's future together. The battle plans came as follows. The information given over by Anastasius Fott revealed that Huntress possesses an active clan space defense system, the control for which was built into the planetary command center beneath Mount Sabo, near the capital city of Huntress called Lootera. Additionally, a small defense fleet of a cruiser and 2 corvettes would be guarding the planet. Groundside, 2 galaxies of troops, which were the Iron Guard, Watchmen, and various training Sibcos. The plan worked out to send DES teams, which stood for Draconis Elite Strike Teams, to take out the space defense system and open the way for the assault force. The Draconis warship Haruna would jump into the Huntress system with the IFF tag identifying it as the Clan Smoke Jaguar warship, Queen Lynx. In truth, the actual Queen Lynx was captured by Task Force Bulldog. Aboard the Haruna would be the captured clan dropships acquired from the Ghost Bear fleet. The DES teams would pose as resuppliers and land on Huntress. If the worst were to happen, the Haruna would use lithium fusion batteries to commence an emergency jump back to the Serpent fleet, and alert them the surprise had been lost, causing an immediate launch of the invasion. But this would not happen. All went according to plan, and the Death teams would commit a halo drop onto Huntress into a mountain range known as the Jaguars' Fangs, not far from Lootera. The clan dropship that carried them would fake a crash landing in the Duan swamp. On the ground, Death teams infiltrated Mount Zabo, destroyed the C3 and SDS systems, and awaited the fleet's arrival. With no communication, timing for the teams and the fleet was crucial. It would all work out in the end, as the Death teams completed their objective with time to spare before alerts went up. Task Force Serpent's warships arrived first, engaging the security fleet, and the transports following shortly after. The rest of the warships arrived shortly after that, and guarded the jump point, leaving no escape for the Jaguars. Each unit in Task Force Serpent had their own objectives, targeting military bases, facilities, and manufacturing plants to all but dismantle Jaguar infrastructure. The only unknown was a Clan Jade Falcon facility on Huntress that was gifted by the Jaguars. MI6 teams in Serpent were sent to observe and alert commanders if the Falcons came to the aid of the Jaguars. The most important target was the genetic repository, and was the mission of the Iridani Light Horse to secure it. It was estimated the planet would fall within a week. It fell within a day. As the dropships descended from above, the Jaguar homeworld fell into darkness. The Battle of Huntress had begun. A question remains. How were Inner Sphere operatives able to infiltrate a clan homeworld? The easy answer is the Smoke Jaguars deemed it impossible. Anastasius Fott's information came from the source, a Smoke Jaguar by the name of Trent. While he would be known as the Betrayer, the catalyst for the death of his clan, he would later become known as something else, a savior. But that is for another time. Trent had told Fott that the Smoke Jaguars would never expect the Inner Sphere to find the homeworlds, let alone reach it. But that reality shocked the Jaguars. Galaxy Commander Rasu Howell raised the garrison military, declaring no free birth will leave Huntress alive. In what is a very lengthy tale, I will tell you instead that the planet did indeed fall in but a day. Huntress was now firmly in Star League control. While the Smoke Jaguars were all but defeated on Huntress, what was left over from Operation Bulldog was on its way back to the homeworlds, including Ilkhan Lincolnosis. After Huntress was battled into submission, General Winston issued Order 01051, which declared any of the following be destroyed, captured, or rendered useless to Clan Smoke Jaguar: mech hangars, fighter bays, command, communication, control, military facilities, factories, warehouses, armories, shipyards, war material, storage, transport, weapons, ammunition, spare parts, food, military supplies, and military assets. In short, the Jaguars would be stripped of all their worldly possessions. Despite having been beaten and surrender called by Rasu Howell, eventually he had other ideas and would not go without a fight. Turning to unclan-like warfare, guerrilla fights would be conducted and carried out by Smoke Jaguar survivors that were blinded by arrogant devotion to their clan. These guerrillas led by Howell would be successful, even for some time after all others had left Huntress. During the attacks on the Jaguar occupation zone in the Inner Sphere, Ilkhan Lincolnosis invited the rest of the clans to the Inner Sphere and partake in the invasion. However, Jade Falcon Khan Martha Pride had accurately called Osis out, stating he was covering up his own clan's failures, and still acting like a Jaguar Khan instead of the Khan of the clans. She also pointed out he failed to give any reports the last 6 weeks and only reported as an attempt to get other clans to act as reserve forces for his clan. He was told that his problems were his own and to solve them himself. After a failed counterattack, Osis cut his losses and gave the order to retreat to Strana Mekti. As if being forced to retreat wasn't enough, Osis received the news the Inner Sphere made it to Huntress and conquered it. Again, Osis went to the Grand Council and to report the Inner Sphere was here, backed up by Martha Pride from her base on Huntress. Again, the Ilkhan asked for aid from the other clans, feeling confident the immediate threat would shake them to action. However, this would have the opposite effect. The other clans became increasingly aware of the Jaguars' fate, and feared their involvement would make them the next target for the Star League. Other clans were not aware how weak the Huntress garrison was due to Osis' own fault and pride. Even then, he believed they could win, but would be easier with aid. A vote was called anyways, and all votes were against lending aid to Huntress. In a fury, Ozus was determined the Jaguars would save themselves regardless, committing anything they had left that worked, including old Star League mechs, ships, weapons, and equipment, and personnel of Salamas, aged warriors, and Jaguar members. A scrappy force was assembled to fight off the Star League. This, however, mattered little. While more Jaguar forces arriving to Huntress caused alarm, the Star League was set at ease when the realization came the Jaguars were scraping the bottom of the barrel, as more and more decrepit mechs and equipment were seen on battlefields. With the Huntress garrison, Ilkhan Oz's forces, and a third refugee force from the Inner Sphere led by a future important figure in BattleTech, Star Colonel Paul Moon, would launch a counter-invasion of Huntress. Paul Moon's provisional galaxy consisted more accurately of 2 galaxy-sized forces of pristine equipment meant for the Inner Sphere fighting. Given command of the counter-invasion by surviving officer of Inner Sphere fighting, Galaxy Commander Hang Meta, Paul Moon had the best chances of fighting the Star League and removing them from Huntress. Due to the Death Team's very efficient jobs, the C3 systems on Huntress were unable to track this inbound force, making a high G burn to Huntress. They did, however, get relative size from the ships guarding the Huntress jump point, which they were engaged with in a battle. The final fight for Huntress would be fought on the ground. General Winston regrouped her forces into 2 main armies. The Iridani Light Horse, Com Guards, and St. Ives Lancers were placed in Lootera. In the first Cathal Ulans, Knights of the Inner Sphere, and Northwind Highlanders were placed around Ozus Lake, which had disabled but otherwise intact production facilities for mechs and weapons. On descent, Paul Moon issued a challenge to Winston, one she was all too happy to accept. A fight on the plains of the desolate continent of Abysmal, while the rest of the Jaguar forces fought for Lootera and Ozus Lake. Meanwhile, a large massive jump signature appeared on a pirate point directly over Huntress. Given the nature, Winston was alerted immediately of the incoming signature, to be met with the streaking mist, Ilkhan Oz's flagship with his own streaked together forces. While in the perfect position to raise the planet for orbit, initial fears of that struck Winston and held her breath. But as time passed, the mist only provided fire support as it launched its forces where needed. The renewed forces of the Smoke Jaguars initially saw victory, but this would be short-lived. The reinforcements deployed to Ozus Lake nearly won, but when asked for more forces, the Ilkhan said that there were none, and to win or die. In a ground meeting with Galaxy Commanders Hang Meta, Rasu Howell, and Sakon Brandon Howell, Winston's Nekakami were deployed to the same location, but explicitly told not to assassinate the Ilkhan. While expressing there were no more forces to give, Ozus revealed he would leave for Strahnamekti once again, to try once more with first-hand testimony of the war. One of the Nekakami, however, was a former Nova Cat, now Spirit Cat, and while in a direct confrontation with the Ilkhan and his bodyguards, the Spirit Cat respected the order not to assassinate, but however challenged Ozus to a trial of grievance. In a sword fight, Ozus was wounded by a severe cut to his leg, nearly severed, but managed to kill the Spirit Cat before being busted out by an elemental strike team to secure the Ilkhan. The Nekakami completed their mission of eliminating high-value targets and leveled the building with explosives. Ozus was evacuated to the streaking mist and jumped to Strahnamekti on the 30th of March. Galaxy Commander Rasu Howell was also last seen departing that building. The Star League, while first pushed back by the renewed forces, rallied, and the very last decisive battle would be fought, but not for Huntress, for the survival of the Smoke Jaguars. The forces at Ozus Lake would be defeated, but dealt a significant blow to the Star League forces there. At the same time, the final battle for Lootera took place.
Get ready, Lance Leader. They're coming. Oh, man.
I see them, Ground Commander. Hold your position.
Problem, Lance Leader. Jaguars are splitting up. I repeat, the mechs have split up.
Copy, Ground Commander. We're on them. Fireflies 1 and 2. Track the Thor.
Roger that, Commander. We're almost there.
We'll handle the Mad Cat. Big Al, stand by to intercept.
Moving to position.
Deception successful. Die, Clanner. He's going critical. Ejecting!
We're tracking the Thor. Lance Leader, do you read?
Moving the target area. Leg damage is slowing me down. Firefly 1 and 2. I can't get there in time. Slow him down while I get into position. You're going to have to be the bait.
Understood, sir. We're on it.
Have locked!
Fire!
Come on. Come on.
Anytime now, sir.
Hang on. That's it. This should be accomplished.
While Lootera fell, the challenge between General Ariana Winston and Star Colonel Paul Moon's forces took place on Abysmal. Seeing her men dying around her, Winston stood forward in her mech to challenge the lead summoner. The duel took place and both took devastating hits. However, the ferocity of the Jaguar pilot won out, as a backhand, as much it is for a mech, knocked Winston and her mech down. Looking up, she saw the barrel of the PPC staring back at her. A sense of calm washed over her as the blazing blue light consumed her. Witnessing the execution, Winston's first officer immediately avenged her in a fueled rage, blasting the summoner with an alpha strike and reduced it to a charred husk. After the battle, good news rang out as the now commander of Task Force Serpent, Colonel Charles Antontescu, received word that the arriving fleet was not Clan, but Task Force Bulldog arriving at the homeworlds, having tried chasing down the escaping forces from the Inner Sphere and was bound for Huntress. April 9th, 3060, Task Force Serpent would greet Victor Steiner Davion, Pre-Center Anastasius Fought, and Hohiro Kurita in the ruins of Lootera, where they would be informed to the circumstances of Morgan Hasek Davion's death. The same day, Star Colonel Paul Moon, whom was captured in the encounter invasion, woke up from a coma to the news his clan was no more. He was also told Trent was the one that revealed how to reach Huntress and brought an end to his clan. Sickened by the realization that a past confrontation between the two might have driven him to defect to the Inner Sphere, Paul Moon would be stricken with an angry shame and believed he single-handedly destroyed his clan. Trent, however, actually came along with Task Force Bulldog and saw Moon in recovery. Paul asked for Bondsref, which is permission to suicide honorably and not suffer the shame of failure, guilt, and demeaning existence. Trent refused and said he would have to live with his shame, as Trent would have to live with his. Later that day, Victor addressed the combined task forces and thanked them for their service and sacrifices. As a ceremonial sign, the last emblem of the Smoke Jaguar on Mount Sazabo was detonated, signaling the annihilation of Clan Smoke Jaguar. There was one more unresolved fight that had to be fought. The trial of refusal on Tukid stopped the clans for a time. But now, to end the threat permanently, one more trial of refusal would need to be fought, and it would be the battle of the century. April 12th, Stranomekti. Victor Davion led SLDF elements into the system under safe passage by Jade Falcon Khan Martha Pride. Landing near the revered Hall of Khans, a delegation of Victor and Fought met with Ilkhan Lincoln Ozas to issue a trial of refusal against the invasion of the Inner Sphere indefinitely in front of the Grand Council. Ozas agreed to the challenge, but the Ghost Bear Khan spoke up and clarified something that would set the future in stone. The trial of refusal was against the Crusader philosophy and nothing else. He would also name the Ghost Bears as a warden clan and refused to take part in the trial. The other warden clans then followed suit, while the Crusader clans were left to fight on their own. Clan Novacat took the side of the Inner Sphere and the reborn Star League on behalf of the Inner Sphere. What would become to known as the Great Refusal took place on Stranomekti, April 23, 3060. Modeled after the Battle of Tukid, many engagements were fought for overall victory. Much like Tukid, the clans only won in minor, but lost overall. Jade Falcons and Star Adders seeing the only victories. Victor would fight Oz's command binary in the Bloody Basin. Not offering Zubrugan to Victor's forces, the two sides duked it out in savage heavy combat. The Jaguar mechs were defeated and the last elemental point bounded in. Victor pleaded them to stop and initiated a conversation with Ozus, whom was an elemental. Removing his battle armor and Victor stepping out of his mech, the two talked face to face, Victor trying to persuade him to surrender, but Ozus only begged for death. When Victor turned away in an attempt to force him to surrender, Ozus bolted for Victor, and reflexively, Victor drew his katana and beheaded Ozus in a single defensive cut. Ozus, now dead at his feet, Victor would remark how saddening it was the Jaguars ended in such a way. The trial concluded in favor of the Star League, barring any Crusader attempt of an invasion. Addressing the Ground Council Khans one last time, Victor made a speech, which fell on deaf ears. But not all would be deaf. The invasion has ended, but not so our contact and our futures. There are countless individuals in the Inner Sphere who have learned to hate you, but we do not intend to prosecute a war against you. At least, not as the Star League. As the Star League, we invite you back to the Inner Sphere, to allow your people and ours to become acquainted. We have things to offer you, as you have to offer us. Beneath this umbrella of peace, there are many new possibilities. We invite you to explore them. Vlad Ward, Khan of Crusader Clan Wolf, would stand and announce his clan's performance ended in a draw, and therefore did not lose, leaving his clan free from the oath. While he was the only one to stand defiant, there were for sure others that mirrored that sentiment. In the aftermath of the annihilation of Clan Smoke Jaguar, Victor dissolved Task Force Serpent and Bulldog, releasing them back to the Inner Sphere, and left Iridani leader Paul Masters as the Inner Sphere ambassador to the clans on Huntress and Strana. However, this station would not last long, as a long brewing storm was on the horizon and would leave the homeworlds in a different state than what they were. The survivors of the now dead Clan Smoke Jaguar would remain on Huntress for a time. Their lives immediately after looked bleak and hopeless, as the rigid structures of their society were erased so completely they would be without a purpose. But as I said, only for a time. It would not be long before they found new purpose and would seek redemption. But that is a topic for another time. Victor Steiner Davion left for the Inner Sphere, his home. But when he returns, it would not be as he knew it. No, what he feared would come to pass, and the next bloody chapter of the Inner Sphere would be at the hands of a civil war that will leave millions dead and countless atrocities committed. We will talk about it, but only after the story of the clans are told. After the SLDF departed clan space, the clans were left shell-shocked and seeking answers to how a great clan was defeated so utterly that a new political age would begin. However, this debate would be a time bomb to the remaining clans. The chapter of Wardens and Crusaders has now come to a close, and now opens a new chapter. But this chapter begins just as bloody as the last one ended. We now look to the next age in clan history, one that will leave it both in tatters and stronger than before. In the eyes of the Predatorial Adder would come the great purge to all clans they deem tainted. The wars of Reaving are at hand. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this very long lore video. It is the longest one to date at an estimated, at the time of recording, to be about 45 minutes or around there. It was a long one. This is creatively the biggest project I've taken for lore videos, and I'm hoping that it turns out the way that I want it to and that you guys enjoy it. This was a really big topic, and I really considered splitting this into two parts, but I felt like if I did that, I would not be doing it justice. This was a huge topic, and I think it covers at least one or two books in BattleTech, and I managed to condense it down this much without removing too much details. Obviously, some of the details are kind of like the more finer, like who is fighting who, how did that fight go, but overall, I got the general details. A lot of the smaller details made it in, and I'm happy with it, and I hope you guys are too. The next BattleTech lore videos until November will be reference series ones. They'll be smaller, shorter ones, because, oh boy, doing this video was an undertaking. really was. So I just need smaller chunks to bite off for a little bit, and then we'll be back onto the mainline videos, which, as I always do, the next mainline video is hinted at in the actual video that you just finished watching. And the next one is obviously covering the Wars of Reaving. If you don't know what the Wars of Reaving are, get ready. If you know what they are, I don't know if I'll be splitting them up into multiple videos. I'll try not to. But when video run times approach 50 to an hour, 50 minutes to an hour, I kind of start considering splitting them up. This one is the exception, obviously, since it is one big, large topic and one that is very important in BattleTech lore. So I felt like if I split it up again, I would be doing it injustice. So the next mainline video is Wars of Reaving. The next reference series videos, I kind of pick as I want to do them. So I can't say which ones I'll be doing, but I know that there will be reference series coming. There will be for sure one in October. So you can expect that. And that's about it. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for supporting these lore videos. I really love doing them. And thank you so much for being patient. I love you guys. Take care.